how we got here. We got here through a conversation with Inga we had, where I shared basically that, that my recent interest is identities and change of identities. And how I got to this, I think it's probably sort of to tie this back to some of the participants here at least. I got to this by thinking about change management, the change management that you professionals know about, and you deal with probably on a pretty much daily basis. Because when you think about change management, there are different layers through which you approach it. And then, the substance layer, that's the skill. If something changed, you maybe have a new system or whatever, a new process. You have to learn a new skill. So this is what change management typically goes, around. Then there is some acknowledgement of the emotional side of it as well, that there are some emotions that people feel towards that new way of working, or they love the old way, despise the new way, or whatever is happening there. So there is some acknowledgement of that. But what there seldom is any acknowledgement of is the fact that embedded in that change, the skill and the emotional level is also one of some sort of a deeper identity, deeper meaning that you have and ascribe to what you are doing. And I think there are many ways through which we can unpack this. I mean, sort of throughout my career, and it's actually funny to see Vilma on this call because we've met many years ago in a much different role as well. So throughout my career, I think there were many different things I've been doing, and there were many different territories that came with the role. As an individual contributor, as an expert in a field, there were certain rules I was expected to abide to. And as I launched myself in the direction in which my intuition was telling me to go, I started figuring out that those old rules not necessarily apply anymore. And I think this is the identity shift. It goes to even, I guess, things as values that eventually shift, which I actually, why I appreciated this book. I appreciated this book because I think, in part, what it says, it's that if it's uncomfortable and disorienting and a lot of other things that it describes, and then whoever hasn't read it, I mean, my sincere recommendations, actually, guys, do. A lovely book, absolutely lovely book. I mean, it essentially sort of validates that, well, you're kind of supposed to feel that. It's if there's uncertainty, it's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually part of the process, how it's supposed to go. So for those of you who are joining from your personal angle, going through this process yourself, in whichever stage you are, you'll probably find benefits on that layer. Whoever of you are joining from the side of, maybe from more of a professional side, meaning that perhaps you are somebody who is bringing in that change, in your organization. I mean, for you to be able to appreciate that people who are subjects to what you are changing in the organization are probably gonna go through some sort of a transition of identity as well. So I think, there are so many different layers that we can unpack in so many different ways. I'm curious to see where this conversation goes. And I can already say, I know we've had some delays in the beginning, but even without that, I mean, I can see an hour is not going to be sufficient. In no way, guys.
We can definitely have part 2. Thank you, Mantas, for sharing. And this is what stuck out from the book for me too. The most, what I loved about it, what acknowledging what any new influences, what we receive or we feel like is stopping us in getting to the direction where we want. It is also not issue, but part of our identity, how we describe ourselves, how what kind of image of our perfect and wannabe self we want to have or have in our image. So being aware how we describe ourselves, and also knowing how that description needs to be changed if we want to get some new levels of experience where we striving or thinking where we would like to evolve. And what you just mentioned too, knowing the process, also what it takes for our personalities to transition. It's not only learning the new skill, it's also description of ourselves with that new skill. Like many times I have clients who say like, I don't know how to present. I ask them, what do you mean by good presentation, and what was your last experience with presentations? And what was good, I actually got really good feedback, so you do know how to present. So many times description of ourselves are not catching up even with the skills what we're already displaying and portraying. So this shifts really need to be happening. And there's also, but in the book I didn't see it, was not mentioned about delusions of ourselves, what we're having too. And then how to get to the realistic self and then accept it. There's a huge journey, but it's easier to go with the coach. I mean, when in sports, they really would show the reality of what I cannot yet throw 70 meters. Like I am at 55 today. It's straightforward, but I need to accept it, and I wouldn't accept it, so I would yell and I would have this image of myself, I'm so much better than this result, and I didn't want to accept it. But acceptance gives us that jump board in really understanding what we need to get to the next step. Because if we ignore it or delusional about our realistic self, then we're not taking those steps needed to get to where we want to be. So these points are absolutely brilliant in the book. And also I love the perspective when we as a leaders usually deals with so many personalities, and having also that understanding and perspective when we lead others through change, through the growth, how to help others to shift not also the skill sets but also identity description of themselves in that journey, so for everyone could thrive. Many times I can see too, not in this group, but leaders just love to throw people into the deep end and to see if they're gonna swim or not. But there's so much what's lost in there, in that journey. But what could be some brilliance not shined. Joe, what ideas sparked for you from this book, and what you maybe thought, maybe a few things what you really loved and what you felt it's missing in the book?
I'll be a little bit quick on this. I really enjoyed this book, and I really want to hear everyone else talk a little bit about transitions, whether you read the book or not. Inga ultimately selected this book, and as I started reading it, it became very clear, why it was a good fit for Elevating Leadership Institute community. In this coaching community, we focus a lot on the theories, the mindsets, the frameworks, the systems of high performance sport transferred to leadership. And so if I take two big overarching themes of working identity, the book, number one is this, the author has this little string through the book where she calls it like unconventional strategies, for transitions. And one of these is that, we don't think and plan our way into transition. We have to experiment and experience transitions, which is like we live in a world where it's really fun to plot it out on paper and imagine how it's going to work and think it out. And the author talks about, no, we have to create exercises, we have to create experiences, which is like a huge part of the way we focus on coaching as well. If we just sit and lectured on, oh, you should do this or you should do that versus sets of exercises, like it wouldn't be nearly as effective. And I thought this was a wonderful message around the topic of transition. The second thing I didn't actually get in the book until today, but I just loved it. And it talked about the community, the people we surround ourselves with when we're thinking about transitions. It's so easy to lean into your usual group of friends, your usual group of colleagues, family members. And there are challenges with this, that of course they on one hand they know you, but maybe on another hand they're not as inclined to see you change so much. And so the author really talks about the importance of finding new and different people to show up in front of, to kind of test and experiment these out. Again, we come back to this community. And Joel Van Pelt, I'm going to use you as an example here, because I was talking to a mutual friend of ours and a former colleague of yours, and I was actually saying about your experiences in elevating that I think it's made a really big difference, that this is a global community here. I've worked with you before on a one-on-one basis. I see you show up very differently in this group, a very diverse group of people from all over the world that you've now been working with for a year now. And I think that has made a profound difference on how you show up, how you support others, how you test out different aspects of your identity. And if I relate this to sport, and like in my training as a canoeing athlete, if I had just stayed in North Carolina and just trained with the same old canoeing athletes that I trained with all the time, when it came to experimentation, I just got to tell you, I mean, when we got into these international training camp situations where we were doing training camps with our most like revered competitors, that is when innovation and experimentation with transition really fired up. And I never would have known that had it not been for elite level sport. And interestingly, when Inga and I were training together as coaches back in the beginning of 2019, a lot of our training was based on the same principles that we're talking about. A lot of exercises, a lot of practice experimentation with a global group of people who are very good at coaching. And we showed up differently. So I would just say, as an overlay, I think if you didn't read the book, and I advocate for reading it as well, experimentation over reflection, and this idea of setting up community of people that maybe you don't even know so well, but it forces you to show up as different version of yourself, which I just got to say, it underpins so much of what we're doing here in Elevated Leadership Institute. So that's my little 3-minute overview on working identity.
People whom we surround with matter so much, and we need to be very intentional, knowing what sides of us, what people bring out, and do we like it or not? Is it those sides what we feel like this is where we would like to move forward? And what you said in the book also mentions, some people don't want you to change. Some people love you to be as they know you, and they're not as supportive in getting you to the new place, because in that would mean that they need also to change. They need to accept and then have that acceptance in themselves, and that's not easy. That's not easy to do.
By the way, in the spirit of community and how we surround ourselves being a two-way street, just a quick story for those of you in Lithuania. My first time visiting Lithuania in March of 2024, Montes and Inga set up a big dinner out, and it was almost all people from Vilnius that were at the table, and English was the language that we all spoke, and it was really for the benefit of one or two people. Like, that's it. And I bring that up in that, yeah, it was helpful to me as a visitor, that we spoke English in that setting. But I could also, now I can look back at that and see all these people sitting around the table. It forces a change for them as well. They show up as a different version of themselves doing that. And I will never forget that moment. And I think it's just, remember, as we show up for groups and we're thinking about how we're going to respond, remember, there's people on the other side that are then bringing out different sides of themselves too, which just, kind of exponentially grows the disposition, opportunity for transformation and change within transition. So I just wanted to share that as well.
And just a side note, this group is special because we pre-select people whom we see can handle these conversations, can handle people transitioning. So it's invitation based and based also on psychographics, what we see in each other, where what we could go in these topics, in the deep topics, to help support each other's aspirations. So this is the place. Renata, I'm curious how this topic sparked for you and how it relates to where you're at, and maybe what questions you have, or maybe you're already answering them.
Actually, I was taking notes while you were talking. So, well, the interesting thing, it resonates with me in few aspects. One, I was head of change at Barclays Bank for 4.5 years, so I had to drive change, which actually Joe mentioned. It's all looks on the paper nice and beautiful on slides, but change transformation never happened as planned per slides or Excel spreadsheets, because in those you never see the people and resistance to change and psychological aspect, cultural generations, different archetypes of countries, or even the maturity of the organizational departments. So I think that's what exactly the book says, that you have to experience it in the book. Well, reading book about the swimming doesn't make you a good swimmer. So that's what I like to say. And it resonates because I believe, and I have a saying that I said to my brother probably 25 years ago. I said, if I'm going to say one day that that's it, this is me, I don't want to change, I know everything, just kill me and bury me, because that means I'm dead. I'm not listening to anyone. I think it's constant change. The way we were physically yesterday were different today. When we think about psychology, the maturity, the psychological well-being, the consciousness and self-awareness is changing every day by every experience. And I love that what you shared about the book, exactly what brought me in life to coaching and training. Because when I was living in the village and I was poor, and I thought, okay, this is my life, this is it. And then I realized, no, wait a minute, who said so? That's my brain talking to me. That's my beliefs, and the wrong ones, that they don't help me to feel good. And then I started being curious, like learning about people and cultures. And every single time I visit any other country, I always learn the polite words so that I at least can start a conversation in the language of the country that I'm in. And I think curiosity and learning and being open to any new people, new perceptions, new groups of exercises throughout the change and transformation. Because there is only way to know yourself by reflection with the others, I think. I can sit in the front of the mirror and try to learn to love others, but if there is no other person around, so what's the point? So it's very huge and deep and wide topic for me. And I think I have been changing throughout the years. And I had an exercise to write 10 most significant memories that I have in my life. I'm 47, so I had to go back 47 years. And that was interesting. I had more than 10. Some of them were positive, and some of them were like, I perceived them as, in the beginning, 20 years ago, as negative, like, beaten up or other things that happen. And now I'm looking at it like with gratefulness and respect that actually it changed me. At that point of time, it was very painful. But now I am who I am because of those scars that I have. So it's a huge topic for me. I could really go deep dive. I can talk about the corporate frameworks, how the change looks, and I can talk about the inner probably process that looks, when you read it or when you talk about it, much easier than through experience, as Joe said. Swimming in the swimming pool or in the ocean is much more difficult than just reading a book about it. So I took too much time. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much for sharing it so openly and vulnerably. So many changes when it happens, but what you mentioned about, and I had that experience, this is who I am, take it or leave it. it's easier for us because it's easier to make decisions. It's everything black or white. And in that, if we tell ourselves and we learn that about ourselves, what I am always in transition, I am always in becoming state, it's not comfortable because then you have to stop, and especially when it's difficult decisions, to really understand who you keep becoming, because those decisions to make, it's not anymore black and white, yes or no. It's like, maybe my past version would say yes, but maybe my new version needs to say no, or the version what I wanted to become. And yes, Renata.
Just quick one to follow up
Yes.
into what you said. I just realized that we are trained to achieve the results as a sportsman, as a professional sportsman. You're trained to jump 70, 50, 75. We all driven in society by results. How many societies are driven by process? When you paid for feeling, not for thinking or achieving the KPI or OKR in your company. So when you're driven by result, then we train one part of the muscles just to be focused on the end journey, and enjoying the process or being in the process is kind of like, okay, by default, we have to skip it or just go through it somehow like written on the slides, but it doesn't happen in real life.
We definitely need to integrate both, and the vision of the process and the results, what it gets us, and then having that complexity of vision and perspective to be able to see those and to arrange those. In high-level sports with right coaches, you do so because this is what makes you sustainable in high performance, because it takes so many years to get to the place where you're one of the best in the world, because there's so many of us in this world. And it takes really, really long time to get yourself to that place. And then if it is only for the result, yeah, the journey cuts short really soon. I'm curious too to learn, Vilma, what thoughts you having about transition, or maybe even questions.
First of all, for the invite. It was, it's really timely, and what really touched me was that was that small piece that you put in the description of the event. It was exactly describing the feeling that I had going through, mostly professional but also personal transitional period that I haven't had for a long time. For a long time, I had transitions naturally going, naturally getting there. This is sort of more a forced one, where, this was exactly describing what, I couldn't find words myself, that sometimes you need to let some things go. And I really liked what Joe mentioned from the book. I haven't read the book, so but what I really loved is I started noticing exactly what he said, that the same environment just does not necessarily work for you. They can be the closest people, and that's very weird. And that's kept me thinking now after his sharings that that's normal. That's not necessarily that the people who used to be very close to you, they can understand this or they can help. That's very normal, that the environment that at this stage with, I just need different people, or I feel that it just works better with different people. And it's painful because sometimes it's the closest ones that you are not, feeling on the same level, and you're not getting there where you used to be, right? But actually that is part of the process, and it's good that it's not only for me. So very glad to a lot of things happening in my mind, even listening from the others sharing. So very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for this share, and also pinpointing off of what you just mentioned, what the closed ones, maybe they have also complications in our change. And we are, as a society, also trained so much to be loyal, and what that means to people, and then how we deal with when we transition, and also to please. That's one of the stress response, because we want to be liked by other people. However, we need to be considered, respected, or liked, and by whom, not by everyone. it's impossible. Many again decisions to make when we are transitioning. Rolandas, what thoughts you're having about this discussion so far, if I may ask you?
I mean, hi everyone. I didn't have a chance to say. So many thoughts. Like I put, I don't know, maybe 10 sentences while listening, and it goes from the things like, this you mentioned, realistic about yourself. What does it mean to be realistic? It's always changing. You're always in transition. The reality is different. You cannot define it. It's not a fixed state. It's the same as we talk now about the change. I would say this is not a now. It should be a verb. Yes, it's always something moving. I never felt that I would be like, transitioning. I always perceived it as a normal thing in my life. I was changing and changing, but I never thought that is a change or something kind of movement somewhere. I always wanted to help and like a little Pinkerable, to fix something, to bring something to one person. Then I wanted to help us 2 persons. Then I wanted to help 10 people, and then I want to help 50 people with something. And also what resonates what Renata was saying about some good and bad experiences, that in the end is something that creates you, what you would be if everything is erased, who you are. I mean, and it basically built me, all the bad experiences and good ones. Yes, it's with the close zoom, it might be the end of the world, but when zoom out, it's not that 47 years, it was a perfect thing, and also I perceive that I never changed. When I was listening to you, I think I never changed. I'm still the same at some point, but this is the same. That something is in the very core of me. Yes, maybe I change the techniques, the tools, the things, how I do the things, but I still want to do the same. I want to help somehow in this core thing. Yes, so yeah, and this mixed feelings about, should I really pay attention? That is a transition, and I should enjoy it. Just like be conscious about the movement somewhere. Yes, that that you will never reach that status, because it's always in fluxus. So, and it's like, as I said, mixed feelings on the thing. I didn't read the book. I already have it on my device. So I really now after the call, I will jump on the first pages and first paragraphs to see what's there. So yeah, shortly about the things, if it makes sense what I told.
Absolutely, and such important reflections. And what you were mentioning about this confusion, it is confusing because certain parts are stable for us as a personality, and this is what we define as an ego in ourselves. It's how we described ourselves, but also we need to know what the edges of it's flexible. So values part, usually they're the core of us, but they should not change as fast as our skill sets or our description of ourselves when we go through the changes. Even those once in a while needs to be updated and reviewed if those are the true values, what we still stand for, and do they stand in our way of reaching what we would like to achieve. And or so this mentioning of what's stable, what's in transition is so important. So thank you so much for Rolandas in sharing your ideas. And Joel, you already also mentioned in the comment this difference between change and transition. Can you expand on that? Because it relates so much to what Rolanda's just shared.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. There's a few things that surfaced in the comments before this, and one of them is the community. What you were talking about with community, that what Joe had talked about, the diversity of this community, right, in international community. I think one of the things that surfaced in a recent conversation in the past several months was that we discussed was, you know, I think as Americans, as representing uh, the American corporate world here, we sometimes identify the problems that we encounter in a workforce, particularly large enterprise like I came from UHG and Optum, is uniquely American, right? And I think what has surfaced through many of these conversations is they're very commonly human sort of challenges, right? And I think that's what's beautiful about this community and this conversation is the human aspect of it. And when we talk about change and transformation, it is so accurate that you have to get outside of your community to have the proper sort of energy and influence for you to really kind of challenge yourself and to make a bold move. When I made it was a self decided, you know, my decision a year ago to leave my organization, right? For a variety of reasons. It took me a couple years, and in fact, it took me through a number of conversations with Joe during coaching sessions that kind of got my mindset in a place where I think it's time for me to really think about a big change for myself. So it was very much a self-inflicted change. I use the word inflicted intentionally because it's been very difficult. Sometimes I've thought I've inflicted this upon myself. It was a decision I made, right? But and when I made this decision and shared it with my colleagues, I think there was a lot of skepticism, if not kind of shock, that why would you do this, right, at this point in your career, so on and so forth. And so I did, in a way, sometimes not find the kind of conversations or support that I really needed, right? But I found it with others. Now, fast forward, it's a year later, okay? And my organization has gone through a tremendous workforce reduction within the past couple weeks. And Joe probably just alluded to this. A common friend of ours was just impacted by that, and suddenly the very people who could not have these conversations with me have been eliminated from their own roles. It's a huge and the very organization I worked in, the growth organization, has been hollowed out, basically eliminated. Right. So I have this whole community of folks now who, over the past 2 weeks, that's all I've done is reconnected with these folks and had the conversations around what my experience has been in the past year, right? Because now they're there, right? I mean, not against that, not it's against their decision making, right? It was done for them. But it's interesting that a year ago we really couldn't connect, but now, a year later, we can because now I have so much experience around what my path has been like. So I think that's a really incredible thing. And I think it is getting back to where we started from and with my comment about change versus transformation. You can make changes, right? And you know they can be iterative and they can be smaller, they can be large and whatnot. But true transformation takes time, and it's a real collection of intentional changes in decision making, right? And I think that that's what's difficult. In my darkest moments, and I've had some really difficult times over the past year, and some highs and lows. And in my darkest moments, sometimes I thought, what if I am the case study of how to destroy your career? What if that's what I can write, right? Like that I make this decision at 53 years old to leave a very good position, um, but also not delivering the sort of kind of things that I needed personally, and very damaging probably to me ultimately. I did have the moments where was that just really poor decision making to make that decision at this point in your career, and a year later I feel vindicated because I see now I'm ultimately landing in the place I feel like the payoff is arriving, but yeah, it's a process. It's not easy. It's not, and you do have those dark moments of like, are things really going to work out in the way that they should? So I think I can speak to that now. I can be a good advisor to people not to lose the faith, to remain focused. But it also takes a great deal of responsibility for you. You have to take a great deal of responsibility and energy and investment in discerning that. right? And I think that's what aligns with the real transformation piece of it. So anyway, I'll shut up. I talk too much in these, but there's always so much to talk about. So.
But this is lovely, Joe. I love it because sort of I think what I'm hearing is basically that what during that year what you would have described as material for writing a book on how to ruin your career. So that behavior now suddenly in the new light suddenly is interpreted as bravery and foresight. And like, okay, so that's a gap, right? Like I'm an idiot, and then all these other people are suddenly reaching out to me because. So, I mean, I think when it comes to sort of putting meaning to the stuff I mentioned at the beginning, if there is this uncertainty and you have doubts, and then yes, well, that's exactly what it means. That being part of the process. I wonder, of course, perhaps the community that we built here was one of the resources you leveraged on, but I wonder, and I don't know what this question will take us. What kept you going? I mean, throughout that year, what were you leaning on?
Absolutely, this community absolutely did the conversations. I remember one in particular in January when I was doing the physical sorting of my household. I had all these children and everything, and it was actually organizing my life and my mind to be able to be receptive to to be able to think about and discern and to map out a path for myself professionally and personally. So yeah, but just conviction that's the right thing. That I felt like I had become a person I didn't want to be in my last role. I felt like I had reached a point and you don't have to redact this from this conversation. From the recording. This is real stuff, and I'm not ashamed of it. I felt like I had moved away from my values. I felt like I was moving away from really liking people. I felt like I'd moved away from really, truly feeling like I was bringing myself to work. And I know, right? And so it really took the past year, I call it a detoxing, right? A corporate detoxing, really just to get out of that environment, return to your own values, reflect a lot, pray a lot if that's your thing, breathe, take deep breaths, and just really reflect and discern. And I know right now, a year later, sitting here talking in this session, I am discovering the best version of myself at 54 years old. And that's incredible to me. I really am. And I think that's one of the things that we had talked about in a previous session is I think I had remained so busy career wise, focused on getting things done and blah, 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 that I avoided a lot. And I was just having this conversation with my sister, who's in the past couple of years has retired. And she said, Joel, you're so lucky to have this experience right now at this point in your career because a lot of people don't have this kind of reflection and dealing with whatever things they've avoided their whole lives until they are 65, much more advanced in age and retired, right? So I think that's one thing that has sustained me is recognizing I have a real opportunity soon enough to change my life, right? And make the next part of my career align much more with my values and how I want to feel about my work and my contributions. So I think that's what kept me going. But just know, I knew I was right. And ultimately, I knew I was right. So anyway, thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. And then we know when we're aligned and when we're conflict in ourselves. When we're in conflict, even the most delicious desserts don't feel as sweet. We feel always something is moving and uncomfortable even in our bodies. And this is a very important note to take. And this is I have only problem with this book is how it's devalues reflection, because if we don't have a time to pause and reflect and really understand the meaning and to go through that right lessons of what you just shared also, Renata, about our experiences in the past. I see quite a few of my clients took really wrong lessons about the events that happened to them, what traumatized maybe them, and they said to them, this is not me and it's never gonna be me, and I never gonna not let myself to be in that position. Maybe it was just a few different perspectives what needed to have in those reflection points to be able to leverage that for the next points in our life. And what you just mentioned too, sometimes we feel in that conflict and we do have courage, as you did, to make that change and to go through this, a lot of emotions what comes through that transition. And this is what we also need to learn, how to be with those emotions while we're transitioning, because they're not pretty. Not
And I
pretty
think
at all.
another thing too, just quickly, you have to indulge those emotions, because the truth is, when you're in your down, dark times and difficult, and this, did I destroy my career thoughts? It feels so bad, you don't want to dwell there very long. So you pull yourself out of it and say, you know what? I'm going to focus here in a more positive place because this doesn't feel good to be here, right? There's a real thing about that too. So anyway.
That's a process how we move ourselves through those emotions, what you said too, in our capacities of energies what we have. And this is what we're learning here in support of each other, in learning from each other's journeys and from our expertise and high performance what we bring in this community. But the changes sometimes happens to us, and what you mentioned too, and this is why this training is so important, because those changes from outside, they will be happening to us. That's life. So how we train ourselves and what we organize for ourselves to go through, so it's on us. It's on us. We are, yes, minute away. Somebody wanted to say something. Minute away from our this beautiful conversation what we started. Megan, I'm curious, like what are your final thoughts from what we just shared?
Yeah, this is, first of all, I want to read Joel's book on how to destroy your career. I think we should. I think that should be our next discussion, is how we write, and have that as our next book club book. This has actually just put me in a much more settled place about kind of the transition I've gone through. I love how Mantis talked about that the anxiety is part of it, because I can interpret that as fear and not as excitement in my own body. So I really, really appreciated that piece of it. And I really appreciate the idea of action over introspection, because I can get in my own head about things and I can swirl about things, and thinking about, when I'm in one of those swirls, what actions can I start to take? What micro actions, micro experiments to pull me out of that really, really resonates. And as I feel like now that I'm moving through my own feelings about this, I'm going to quickly be in a position of leading change. And how can I take this to my teams who aren't going to read a book universally, all of them? How can I start to practically help walk them through
this? You sparked more ideas for us as a team to create more opportunities to discuss about these topics, and wanted to remind what all of you invited to our next conversation, what we will have on September 18th with Whitney Otto. She is a world champion, she is a therapist, she is executive coach and author, and she also was my mentor. The introspection, but she has an ability to talk about high performance and transitions and change. It's the person to listen to and to interact to. So you will hear our reminders, otherwise ping us to be invited to those conversations. What a joy. Mantas and Joe, last 2 sentences. And then we will reconvene to see each other in September 18th, all of us.
I'm gonna close, guys, with a quote. That goes like this. I'm not gonna say who it's from, not in the beginning at least. The quote is as follows: "I'd rather be a hypocrite than the same person my whole life." So that's something to consider, and the source, by the way, is actually quite, it sounds like a philosopher might have said it. No, it's actually the lead singer from the Beastie Boys. But still, it's none less valid because of that.
Absolutely.
Can you repeat the quote one more time, because I get a glitch?
I'd rather be a hypocrite than be the same person my whole life.
I love it.
Genius. Joe?
Just, in the spirit of what Montes just said, I remember several years ago, I wrote an essay about my experiences on the river related to sort of how we manage and pursue our lives. And I don't know, I think everyone on this call has either said to a friend or can imagine a friend saying to them, "Oh yeah, we'll get together when things settle down, when things calm down." We hear that a lot. And a lot of people have said to me, like, it's kind of like waiting for the Whitewater River the rapids in the river to stop and become flat, and then we can do our thing. And I know from being a whitewater canoeist that there's just something so fundamentally wrong about that mindset, that the only opportunity to move and create opportunity and to make change is when there's rapids, when the water is actually moving. That somehow we built up this idea that, oh, when the water stops, then I will make progress. For me, it's the opposite. We need the rapids. Like, when the water stops, I mean, we're kind of dead. And we're, this idea that we're kind of holding out for things to slow down, I think we have to embrace the other side of it, that we are in constant movement. And I think as we get better at navigating the river rapids of life, that is when these ideals really start to kind of come into play and make sense. And it's like, don't wish for the flat water to come. Like, it's not a good sign, if it does. And I think embracing and really waiting for, navigating the constant and ever changing rapids that a river is by its very nature, that's where we're really kind of living life to the fullest.
And we can enjoy that ride. Especially seeing how when you show in the videos, others go through this rapid river with such a passion to through those obstacles. I mean, we can learn, we can train ourselves to really be good at that swim. So thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your presence and your input in growing yourself and us. See you in a few weeks. Cheers.